Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another special guest episode of Ending Physician Overwhelm. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to be able to share with you my business coach and mentor, affectionately known as Dr. Nneka Unachukwu. And she's going to share a little bit about her story in the physician space and what she does now. Dr. Una, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
I am so excited and really so honored to be on the show. I think this will be a very fun conversation. And you know that I love what you do. I'm so grateful you do what you do for physicians. We really do need all hands on deck. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. I think you and I share a deep love of doctors. That comes out very clearly, and we serve them in different ways, but it's really exciting when we get to come and share and chat and see all the good work that's being done. So for anyone who's out there listening and doesn't know about all your amazing work, please share with the audience who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Dr. Una. I am a pediatrician by training. And I started off as an employed physician and I was happy with that. I think I've just had a lot of nudges. And so there was initial nudge and like, why don't you start a private practice? I like to say ignorance was bliss because if I knew now what I knew, if I knew then what I know now, I would never have tried to do it. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And I asked a few questions. I started a private practice, scariest thing I ever did, but best thing I ever did because in the process of doing that, I realized that as physicians, we can really thrive as entrepreneurs once we understand that we may suck at it, but that's just because we haven't learned how to do it. So I learned from Brian Tracy that all business skills are learnable. And I started learning that and really thrived as the CEO of my private practice for the last 14 years. And that was my big first pivot. And then after that, I had this knowing that medicine as we know it is gone. Things are going to be very different for physicians. So this was in 2016. And I started asking myself questions like, if I could no longer doctor, how could I still help people? How could I still help patients and still have a huge impact and still have my financial freedom in place? And that's when I found speaking and writing books and coaching people and consulting and all of these other things. And I just turned around and said, okay, this is not something I need to do alone because it's going to be ugly for the entire physician community. So that's when EntreMD was born, and it was really around let me help doctors. My BHAG, my big hairy audacious goal is to help 100,000 doctors figure out how to build profitable businesses. So then they have the freedom, right? It doesn't really matter what is happening in the healthcare space. We're still in control. We have the freedom to live life and practice medicine on their terms. So I've done that for the last 5 years, podcasts, books, the EntreMD Business School, live events, all of that, but all really just to support doctors like you do. Because yes, there are many things going on, but this is our time. And that's the truth.
And tell me what it was back in 2016 for you that kind of set things off, because I've heard you talk about this insight that you had very kind of much earlier and saying to a lot of people of, I can't just be a doctor. There's got to be something more. I need to have more to sort of lean back on. What were the signs for you that things were changing?
So I think the biggest thing, I don't think I can take credit for it because it was intuitive. Like I can't put a finger on it, but I knew that I knew that I knew that things were about to change in a very big way, which is very odd because now it's obvious, right? It's a lot more obvious, but we're talking 8 years ago. And so when I talk about it, people are like, you're absolutely nuts. That will never happen and things like that. But in addition to that, if you looked at it, when I graduated from residency, there were barely any urgent cares.
Yeah.
There were no minute clinics.
Mhm.
There were not like the independent practice of, say, nurse practitioners or PAs, all of these things. It didn't really exist.
Yeah.
And so we were in this bubble where hang a shingle and they will come was a true statement because we had a monopoly, right? Like
Yeah.
we were in high demand and there was nobody else really in the healthcare space. And so in 2016, it wasn't as obvious, but there's a lots of lobbies for independent practice. There were minute clinics springing up. Like I like when I was a resident, if you told me Walmart would be my competition, there would have been no way for me to conceptualize that. You see what I'm saying?
Or Amazon.
Or Amazon or JP Morgan, like
Right.
none of those things. And so looking at that, I'm like, the rate at which this is going, if you project 10 years from now, this is going to be ugly because we are not in a position. Well, now there's so much help in the space, but we were not in a position to compete because we never had to compete. We did not have business skills. We almost think like business is a cuss word, like we don't do that because this is the healthcare space, but the healthcare space has changed in a way it can never go back. And so I'm like, if anybody needs to be equipped to compete in this space, it's us. I mean, it's called a doctor-patient relationship. You know what I mean? Like we need to be able to secure that. And so that was something that kind of validated my intuition, if you will. But the thing that drove me to evolve as much as I did was it was just a knowing, like you cannot afford to be this person who has this skill and you're depending on somebody else taking care of your career and the outcome of your life and all of that stuff and your financial freedom. Like it's too expensive. You cannot afford it. So yeah.
Yeah, and certainly you and I trained around the same time, and very much the ethos was, yeah, you're gonna go get a job. There wasn't this push into private practice, but yes, and it was also quite different in the landscape. I think about the parallels with that and sort of the physician wellness space.
Mm.
I remember in kind of 2014, 15, 16, going to these conferences about physician wellness, and the push was yoga, and of course these things are still chatted up, but the physician struggles are so much deeper than simply slapping some yoga around. And similarly, learning business skills, we're not just going to read a book and magically know what to do. We have to be prepared to suck at it. And I'm curious your experience and perspective on that more, because in my experience, we hate sucking at things. We have been in this training for such a long time that when there's something we're not good at, we just want to hide. We want to run away. We want to say, nope, that's not for me. And I know that part of your mission is pushing past that in physicians. I'd love for you to share more of your experience.
Yeah. And now that you asked that question, I knew this was going to be a really good interview because I had this feeling you asked me questions I really haven't been asked before, which is great. When I think about it, I think one of the things that makes me more like an outside the box thinker is that I've had some experiences that just molded me differently. And so for me, I never felt like I was the best. I never really had that feeling. I felt like other people were better than me and I had to do the work to measure up. Not in a way where I didn't have self-esteem or anything like that, but that's just kind of the way it was. So for instance, now I did go to medical school in Nigeria. So what that means is they use the European system. So it's from high school to medical school. There's no pre-med or anything in between. So I turned 17 in medical school, right? So at that point, I'm like, all these grown-ups, they're the people who are really doing the thing. I'm just here to give it my absolute best shot. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, then I trained in a different country where we have tropical medicine, and I came here and it's temperate medicine is different. So we're talking Burkitt's lymphoma, malaria, all of those stuff. Here it's like viral gastroenteritis. I'm like, good for you. That's not that serious. You know what I mean? But it's another shift. And so coming here, I'm like, okay, but I can study, I can do my part, and I can become one of the best. So there's almost this is not really like an underdog in a bad way, but I was like, I have to do the work to measure up. So I was a lot more willing to do things messy because it was the only way to get good. There was just no other way. And if I would say I need to do it perfectly, I wouldn't make any pivots. I would not have shown up in medical school at 16. I would have said, oh, I know everything about medicine over here. I'm not going to move to another continent. You see what I'm saying? I just wouldn't have done those things.
Yeah.
And I think as a pediatrician, the developmental milestones really fascinated me. So for instance, a child turns 1, families gathered around, and they're so, it's Johnny's birthday and all of that. And Johnny, for the first time, takes 3 steps and Johnny falls. What you will not hear is Johnny fell. Nobody says that. They're like, oh my goodness, Johnny took 3 steps. Somebody recorded it. Send it to grandma. All of these things happening. Everybody is celebrating the 3 steps
Yeah.
that were messy. And nobody's talking about the fall that followed it. But if that baby will do that over and over again, they'll get to the place where they're running, jumping, climbing, doing all of those things. And so it's made me really embrace the mess that is required for you to evolve. There is no evolution if you're stuck on perfection. It just cannot happen. So I think I have some privilege, if you will, because I've never quite dealt with not being okay with the mess because I've had to do it so many times. But that is the thought process is if you want to be the same and just keep getting better and better at being the same, perfectionism works.
Yeah.
If you want to evolve and have 9 lives in one, where every year people look at you like, how did you become this person? Then you need to fall in love with the mess because the mess is the pathway. There's no other way. No other way.
Brene Brown would divide that out as there's perfectionism and there's healthy striving. And it's common in my community where we're talking about like overcoming perfectionism that people just have this black and white notion of, well, either I'm in my perfectionist mind, right? Or I'm lazy. I suck. I'm terrible at this thing. And I think that's a beautiful example of, no, we lean in, we do things messy, we learn, we solve. I mean, not only do we celebrate those 3 steps, we might actually celebrate the fall, right? Oh, it's okay, because we want to build up that child, right? That knowing that falling is just fine.
Yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful example for people to keep in mind. So, okay, so 2016, right? You sort of leaned in and you realize I need other skills. And I'd love for you to share your evolution as well, because I also know that I have a lot of introverts listening. And you talk very openly about being a super introverted introvert, right? And navigating into this space where you've become a podcaster, an author, a speaker. So I'd love to hear kind of more about that, because I do think that that is something that holds people back. This idea that I'm an introvert and therefore I can only kind of exist in this small space, which doesn't work very well when you're trying to build a business.
Yeah, it absolutely 1000% does not work. like at all. It doesn't work.
They will not come.
They will not come. I've done that. I took one. What I say is I took one for the team. Don't do it. Okay. It does not work. So when I started my private practice, as you alluded to, I was painfully shy, introverted introvert. And again, my philosophy was I'm a great physician. I have great bedside manner. I have like people will just come.
Yeah.
Now, years before our time, that would have been true, right? Like people would come, but that time doesn't exist.
Okay, here's a pediatrician close to me. That's where we're going to bring our kids.
But that time doesn't exist anymore because there are now so many players in the space that is just gone. And so I think one of the gifts I have is that I was terrified of putting myself out there, learning the business skills, doing any of those things, like mortified. But I am more scared of living out my life and not becoming who I could have been. I am more terrified of that. And not terrified in a bad, holding my breath kind of way, but I'm more afraid of that than putting myself out there and what may happen with that. And so when I think about it, I hang out with my 90-year-old self on a regular basis. And I did the exercise. I learned it from Brian Tracy as well, where I sat and I said, okay, it's not, people say, what will be read at your funeral? And I'm a very visual person. I was like, I can't walk around with that visual. We're going to need to find something happier. So I picked my birthday, my 90th birthday. And I imagine being around my kids, being around my grandkids, my husband, maybe all the doctors I'm impacted, the mentees I've had over the years and all of that. And I've thought about, what do I want them to say?
Yeah.
And I'm writing all these things down. But when you do that exercise, the first thing that dawns on you is, if I want to say that, I best get to work. Because it immediately dawns on you that you are not setting the stage for that to happen at all.
Right.
And so exercises like that kind of gave me the guts to face what was scary in front of me, because the things required to build a dominant business, a profitable business, and all of that, you're talking things like speaking, networking, asking for referrals, asking for people to work with you, asking for reviews, asking for people to continue to work with you, looking at profit and loss statements. Like there are these things, there are none of them that I like zero, not a single one. But then there's no way forward without going through them. Okay. Now you would think, oh, yeah, so that makes sense. So now the fear is gone. No, the fear never went away, but I was willing to do the work with the fear right there. So I embraced the fear. The first thing I did was I did a program learning to be a speaker. Like socially awkward, super shy, introverted, introvert speaker. You see how those don't go together? And it was a 10-month program, but I did it messy. I did it afraid. In fact, I was working 4 days a week in my private practice at that time. So I didn't have time to go be on stages and stuff like that. So I was like, but I am not going to implement what I'm learning here. So I started a Facebook Live show. I thought about it. I was terrified. So you know what I did? I pulled out my camera, pulled out my phone, went to Facebook. I'm like, hi, my name is Dr. Una. I'm the CEO of Ivy League Pediatrics. And parents, I know how many times parents are like, I think I'm breaking my child. I don't think I'm doing a good job and all of these things. And I'm a mom of 4 kids and a pediatrician too. So I'm going to come up every Thursday at 1:30. I'm hosting a brand new show. It's called the Legacy Parent Show. We're going to talk about this because we're all going to be confident parents, blah, 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 blah. I did that scared spitless. But what I had done is I had told the entire world, I'm going to show up every week, right? And then this gave me the opportunity to practice. I'm bringing it all the way down so you can see how messy. You see what I mean? There's nothing perfect about it.
Very simple, right? It's
very simple.
Anything but your phone.
And this is me scheduling the things I'm afraid of rather than not doing them, right? This is me putting myself on the spot. And so it was embracing one thing after the other, and every scary thing I did led to another evolution.
And more
you see what I mean?
Things.
So more, exactly. You know how this works, right? The reward for doing scary things is the opportunity to do more scary things. That's the way that works. But I'll tell you something, and you may have heard me say this before, but it's important for your listeners. In 2020, I remember taking a walk, and I remember thinking about all the scary things that I had to do, and I was okay with it.
Mm.
For the first time, I was like, wait a minute. It dawned on me, you can get comfortable living in discomfort. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So what I tell people now is do those uncomfortable things, do them consistently, embrace them, do them messy, and you will get to the point where you're like, yeah, that's uncomfortable, but what else is new? It's a beautiful place to be. Yeah. Beautiful place to be. So I embraced that. And in the first thing I did was really I started doing programs for teenagers in my practice, help them develop leadership skills and all of those kind of things. Then I started helping entrepreneurs generally. I did my first event and it was for entrepreneurs. And it was very strange because the physicians in the room were like, clearly you're not talking to us. We don't do stuff like this. And the people who are not physicians are like, clearly you're not talking to us because we don't have what you have, access to capital, your network, all of those kind of things. And that's when it dawned on me I had to pick somebody. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, the people who are non-physicians, they have more of an understanding of how business is accessible to them, more so than physicians. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, physicians are my people. We're the ones who have a storm coming and all of that. And that's literally how EntreMD was born. So started with one-on-one coaching, then did a group program. It was 12 weeks. And you will understand this because we've worked together for a while. Okay. So after 12 weeks, everybody's like, that was so fantastic. Look at all the wins I got. Somebody was like, my business grew by 115%. This is amazing. And they all left. In my brain, I was like, hello, if this happens in 12 weeks, this means we should continue this. And that was when I vowed, I was like, I will never do another 12-week program for as long as I live, only because I know we can continue to evolve. This does get better and better. Yeah. I mean, like, if wine can become fine wine over time, what could we become, right? If we did something long enough. And so I did a 9-month program, which was really the precursor for the EntreMD Business School. And then the EntreMD Business School, which we've had for almost 4 years. It will be 4 years in June of 2024. And to be able to support doctors to build businesses, to take back control, to have financial freedom, to create time freedom. It's just like one of the greatest joys. And I do want to make it clear that we're not having people leave medicine. Like, I have no interest in that. This is really about what is it you want to do? Whatever that is, let's build a business system around it so you have the freedom to do it. So we have people who are employed, we have people who are coaches, all of those kind of things. But it's been amazing. And standing from this standpoint, right, because this journey has been for 14 years at this point, I can say the person listening right now, whatever is the scary thing that is standing between you and the next version of you, just do it. It is so rewarding. The person you become in the process, you will love that person. The impact you go on to create, it would make your life have such significance that it's so much better than the money. And I don't allow people not go I don't want to make money route, because I'm like, we live in an economic world. Okay. We need to serve and earn. Right. Yeah. We need to serve and earn. But at the same time, your contribution to society, your ability to change the lives of other people, whether they're patients, clients, audiences, whatever, it is so worth any fear you have to crush to become that person, to create that impact, to create the financial freedom, to create the time freedom, to do the things that really matter to you. This is one life. It's not a rehearsal. We might as well do it like we mean it. So embrace it. Don't run away from the fear. Don't run away from the discomfort. Do it. It is worth it. It is.
I think that's so important. And I want to just pull out the statement. The idea is that the fear is there. The fear is allowed to be there. We don't get the fear to go away. It just comes with us. And we don't let it stop us from doing the things that we want to do. Because I think that's obviously a very breaking point for a lot of people. Like, oh no, I just couldn't do that. That's too scary. All of us who have made it through medical school and residency had to imagine ourselves as being capable of doing that in order to get through. So it's not as though we haven't done this before, but it's a less prescribed path, what you're talking about, of trying to really connect. What is it that I want? What is it that is inside of me that fear is kind of sitting in the middle of us that I am not doing? But I love that idea of that future self, that 90-year-old version of yourself who wants to be able to look back and think, oh, look at all these amazing things that I've done, and not look back and say, yeah, I really wanted to do that, but it was too scary. It was too stressful. I didn't ever take the steps forward. Because you're right, this is the time in our lives where we really want to make that happen. And I'll fully disclose that here I am. This is February of 2024, and I've been working together since January of 2022. So that longevity, that really leaning into our continued evolution is so important, and having safe spaces to do it. Because another thing that I see in the medical world, as you do as well, is that there are not a lot of safe spaces for physicians. What we saw coming out, and people who are employed had this impression that employed positions were safe. And I think that's kind of what you were tapping into a little bit of seeing, yeah, it's not so safe here in 2016 because the competition is coming. It's coming whether we want it or not. And certainly the pandemic really, I think, amplified that message.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's not, if we think as investors, right? Like, our becoming physicians is, for most people, one of the greatest investments we made, right? It takes over a decade, right? Mm-hmm. So we gave up a decade of our prime years. These are not like, this is not like 70 to 80. We gave up like some prime time, and for many, multiple six figures in debt, right? Yeah. Now, if I was going to invest and it cost me 10 years of my life, and multiple six figures, I'm investing in something,
Mhm.
I would not put that thing in anybody's control.
Yeah.
I would not put the return on investment in anybody's control, whether I'm employed or not. I need to understand, how can I maximize the return on investment? And that could be like, it's a combination of things. One is financial freedom, right? So people are like, well, I don't want to really talk about the money. I don't care about the money. I'm like, yeah, but you paid money to develop this thing. Do you know what I mean? And we live in an economic world.
Right.
Okay. We want to be able to provide for ourselves. We want to be able to provide for our families. We want to be able to provide for our grandchildren, leave them an inheritance, give them a leg up. We want to be able to contribute to society. I mean, like, we can make make it and give it away. That's what I say. I don't care. Make it and give it away, but you have the capacity to make it, so make it, right? So there's the financial freedom, there's the time freedom, because I don't think anybody did 80-hour work weeks in residency to think they will continue to do 80-hour work weeks forever. So
And now,
the thing that lets us go through that is an understanding that on the other side, things will be different. You see what I'm saying?
yeah.
And so it's the financial freedom, it's the time freedom, and it's the significance, because I've talked to a lot of doctors. There are very few doctors who go into medicine other than, I want to help people, I want to change the world, I want to do all of these kind of things. But somehow the process of becoming a doctor beats it out of us.
Mhm.
And we lose that dream. I want to change. Like, somebody saw a disease condition that wasn't properly handled and all of that. They come out and they're like, I want to change this for all kinds of people who are dealing with this, or all kinds of children who are, and we lost it.
Mhm.
Well, entrepreneurship lets you find it. And because you can build a system around it, you can do it. And so I'm of the opinion that it doesn't make sense to make that level of investment and just say, my job will take care of me. Society
Mhm.
will take care of me. Like, that was kind of sort of true back in the day, but there's no truth to it whatsoever now. And I'm an optimist, but I will tell you, things are going to get uglier before they get better.
Yeah.
And so the work I do, the work you do, this is, okay, docs, this is how we put on our oxygen mask. And by the time we have enough of us with our oxygen masks on, we can then go after the system and fix the system.
Yeah.
But if we are in this broken state, we cannot do anything about the system at all.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue into sort of talking about boundaries as well, because that's also a lot of things that we talk about here. And I'm curious to know sort of more, when you are seeing physicians who are making some kind of transition, perhaps opening a business, what are the struggles that you see with them and boundaries that you try and help people work on?
Yeah, that's a big one. And
Mhm.
it's one that if we don't address it, especially as entrepreneurs, you will go from one burnout situation to a burnout situation you created by your own self. I've
No
done that.
employer needed. Right?
No employer needed. Like, burnout, I got this, right? So when I first started my private practice, I didn't I think I had some privilege again, and that's because I had been in situations working in a nonprofit where I was surrounded by people, so I had to learn those boundaries the hard way.
Mhm.
And so for doctors, the way it looks is this: you would have heard doctors who say, "Oh, come to my practice. You can call us 24/7," and I'm like, "Why would you say that? You don't want anybody to call you 24/7. I mean, like, if 20 patients took you up on that, you will die a slow and early death." And so the question becomes, it's a new way of thinking. How can I have protected time as a
Mhm.
physician
Mhm.
and give my patients what they need?
Mhm.
Right? So things like, call me anytime, you will never hear that from my mouth, ever, because I need the boundary. This is when I work.
Mhm.
This is when I'm available for emergencies. But this is like 9 to 5 is when I'm available for anything. So communicating that, changing the way we communicate, like, we need to give up this 24/7 access thing. It's not true. We can't, like, you actually cannot do that. And so with a job, that's bad, but with your own business, that's awful, because you have multiple hats. You're the quote unquote technician, you're the physician doing the thing, then you're managing the team, then you're the CEO making sure the business is working. Like, you cannot do that. So there's boundaries with patients, and that does not mean you're abandoning them. That does not mean you're not there. It's just doing it in a way that's sustainable.
Yeah.
If I have people calling me at 2 a.m. for a rash that has been there for 2 weeks, how am I going to see them at 8 o'clock in the morning? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, for me to take care of you,
happens, right? That's our lived experience, and we come to think of it as normal.
It's not normal.
Not normal.
It's not normal, and we need to change that. And you might say, but I want to be there for the thing is, if you need to stop practicing medicine because you got to a point where you couldn't take it anymore, they don't have the person who will see them in the office or the person who will fix the rash at 2 o'clock in the morning. So how about we get rid of the rash at 2 o'clock? You see what I'm saying? So sometimes it feels bad, but we need to build those boundaries. That's one. The second thing is really boundaries around our personal life. Now, especially if you're starting a business or you're growing a business or whatever, there is a word you need to fall in love with, and it's no. And it's a word, and it's a full sentence. So I'll paint the picture of when I started my business. My husband and I, we started the business, we started the practice. At the same time, we had just moved our church, which we both co-pastor, which means there's no weekends. Thank God it's Friday doesn't mean anything because I work weekends, right? Okay. And then I had 2 children under the age of 2. So I had a 23-month-old and a 4-month-old, right?
Yeah.
Yes doesn't work in that scenario, right? Because when I became an entrepreneur, again, I went from just being a pediatrician to a pediatrician, a manager, and a CEO. I took 3 jobs, okay? And I was working part-time in the urgent care, so I wouldn't have to take any ginormous loan. I self-funded my private practice. So when somebody says, it's my birthday party and I want you to come, and I can't go, I say no. If it's my mom, yes, okay, sure. But even with that, I can be there for the time I can be there because I have all these other things going on. And so I had to be okay with not being everything to everyone at all times. And I'm okay saying no. And it's either I sleep and I'm okay, so I can do all these 72,000 things I need to do, or I crash and burn. And I was not willing to crash and burn. So there are these personal boundaries that need to be set as well. Okay. So we've talked about the personal boundaries. We've talked about the boundaries with the patients. There's also boundaries with the team, right? Dr. Una, we have this mom who has this question about XYZ. What do we do? I call that their monkey. And I'm like, I am not touching, like you came into your office with squawking. I'm not touching your monkey. You keep your monkey there. I'm like, what would you like to do? And I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. I'm like, great. So I'm going to have you go think about it. You're going to come up with 3 things you would do, and I'll tell you which one to pick. That is training your team to become thinkers, to become outcome driven. So you have a true team. Many people have 5 people on their team, but the owner is doing the work of 5 people because they're doing all the heavy lifting, and they just have people who will do some random tasks here and there.
Bring a switchboard operator through which everything must go through, which again is burnout territory, right?
Yes, absolute nightmare. And so empowering your team to make decisions, training them to think, doing all of those things, you're setting this boundary where I'm at this level, these are the things I think about. These are the decisions I make. The rest of the decisions, I've trained you and empowered you. You do that. And again, that creates a lot of bandwidth and space for you to not be burned out. I think the other boundary is really around, for one of better way to phrase it, is the real you, like internally. And it's a boundary around me first. Me first, it's not selfish. It's the same concept of put the oxygen mask first on you before you help anybody else. Because somebody did a post recently and they said, how do you make time for self-care? I was like, that's a very interesting question. I don't make time for it. It's the thing. So for me to be able to handle the challenges that come with entrepreneurship, the ups and downs, constantly going against my fears and all of that. I need to be strong inside.
Mhm.
And so for me, that would look like things like prayer, meditation, exercise, having meaningful time with my family because that fills up my cup, taking walks, all of those things. Those come first. But there's a boundary around it. So if somebody wants to have a meeting with me at the time when that happens, that meeting is not happening because that's the time for me to take care of me. I don't push that to the side. I don't postpone it. I don't like, I figure it out and I get it done because I'm the rate limiting step. I'm the center of gravity. It's me. If I'm not okay, everything else falls apart. And so there's some pretty big boundaries around like, it's a non-negotiable,
Yeah.
you know?
And
Yeah.
it's so essential. And I think we can never hear that enough to be able to see that when we can put ourselves at the center, yes, it's not selfish. It's not about ego. It's really about us performing well, having a good life, and being able to do whatever it is that we love to do, but not to the exclusion of everything else that we are, right?
Yeah.
If we have kids, if we have family, if we have hobbies, if we have those things have to be still central to us in order to really thrive, and everything else can come around the sides. It's so contrary to what so many physicians, I mean, it's contrary to how we've been trained, right? Where
Correct.
patient comes first, the service comes first. Everything is about the work, 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 work. Look at where that's gotten us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is you don't have the capacity to chase down a vision and make it a reality if you're not okay.
Yeah.
You don't have the capacity to weather the inevitable storms if you're not okay. Now, in my world, like in the business world, I have watched in unbelievable someone running a multi seven figure business is just I can't take it anymore and shuts it down. Like just shuts it down and walks away. And a lot of times it's the inner like the is just not there anymore. And so we have been sold this thing of patients first, everybody comes first. They don't they're high up, they're priorities, but they're not first. What there are physicians who got burned out and said, "That's it. I'm not doing this anymore."
Mhm.
So is the patient still first? The patient lost because the person was not okay inside.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? And so the best thing we can do for our patients, for our team, for our family, for the vision, for our 90-year-old selves is to make sure we are okay. It's one of those things that are important but not urgent. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
if you don't take the time to check in with yourself, if you don't take the time to journal or have a gratitude practice or meditate or pray or do all of these things, if you miss it for 5 days, nothing terrible is going to happen. If you miss it for a month, nothing terrible is going to happen. But if we don't take care of things that are important but not urgent, they become urgent. They become
It become
emergencies. They
crisis.
become big
Yeah.
problems. And so I say treat it like if you're someone who takes a shower every day, just treat it like a shower. Like this is like, you know what I mean? Just take your shower, take your internal shower.
I brush my teeth, I do my journaling. It all just flows.
Yeah.
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 Well, talk to us a little bit about the work that you do within the business school, because obviously I've heard you say many times, and I'm experiencing it up close, that is your sort of professional love and the sort of big baby that you created. But tell us a little bit about what that looks like and how you serve physicians.
Yeah. So the EntreMD Business School, it's a really magical place. And I when I started working on it to create it, my dream was to build a place where doctors could get the business education we never got, but we get it in a way where it's not like going after another degree and another 2 years and the graphs and all the like I don't want that. I didn't want that. But you learn the proven timeless strategies that make businesses work period. And so in this way, you become this person who can go on to be an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, build 6, 7, multi 7-figure businesses, all of that. You understand how to do that. Now, the second piece is I wanted doctors to be able to do that in a way that is no longer self-sacrificing, where you're doing this and you have more time and you have better relationships and your health is better because you are no longer giving up those things to get the dream, which is what we did on our path to become doctors. But at this point, we've done this for so long, right? Like how much longer are we going to postpone this thing for? And so you hear me say it where we're building our dream businesses and our dream lives concurrently. And you've been there. And so you'll see that people are like, my goodness, I have the best relationship with my spouse now. My relationship with my kids are better. I have more time to spend with them. We were able to do a vacation once a quarter. People will say at our in-person events, people walk up to me and say, EntreMD Business School has changed my business. But the biggest thing it's done is made my marriage better. And like statements like that. Someone said, I was in therapy for 3.5 years. I've been in EBS for 1 year, did more for me.
Yeah.
It's about the life. Like we can build lives that we love. As physicians, we can have that, right? So we have the business is profitable, is creating the financial freedom, is allowing us have a lot of impact. But at the same time, we're building our dream lives. And I think the third piece is really being in a community that is really an alternate reality.
Yes.
So when I'm in Facebook groups, in physician Facebook groups, it's a lot of hopelessness. And there are reasons for it. So I'm not saying like they're legit reasons for it.
Whiny or unfounded. It's people are hurting.
It's real. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of hopelessness. It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of frustration. It's a lot of being stuck. There's no way out of this. It's hating the profession almost and all of those things. But we can control our destinies and we can have a different experience. And so if you can imagine the exact opposite of that, that's what we have in the business school, where in another group, people are like, oh, I got terminated. And people are like, oh, in the EntreMD business school, I got terminated. Yes, now you can finally go start that business that you've always wanted to start. Let's go. You were building the business before the business. And the thing is, it's not just rah-rah, because there are many people who've been terminated.
Yeah.
They went on, they started businesses. Businesses are thriving. And they are saying that being terminated was the best thing that ever happened to me, right? And so you see doctors willing to talk about, this is my business. We crossed 100,000, 500,000, 1 million, 3 million in revenue. Like, so vulnerable to share. Yes. It is a place where it's safe to come and say, I am struggling in my business. I haven't been able to sleep. This is going on. And people will come out from everywhere to support. It's a safe space to share the wins, the trials, the beautiful things that are happening. At the lowest of valleys, understand that people will come out and support you. Everybody needs a community like that, right? And then you have access to all kinds of people in all kinds of different businesses, all kinds of stages, and they have all kinds of experiences, all kinds of connections. And that's why we call it the EBS Commonwealth, because you have access to your network is so rich, not dollars. It's everything is the dollars, the connections, the experience, like the expertise is all of it, where you can say, I'm looking for XYZ and people can get you exactly what you need. And so it is truly a place where any physician who I want to evolve. I want to walk away from this narrative. I want to have a career I love. I want to have a business that is successful. I want to enjoy the journey. I gave up my life to become a doctor. I want to reclaim it. Then that's the EntreMD Business School is just the place for you. And this is why we had people who joined when we first started in 2020 and they've never left. And that is why people came up with their own hashtag, EBS for life. And to be honest, I think I've told you this, Dr. Mello, when I started the school, the tagline in my brain that I didn't have the boldness to put anywhere was the only school you'll never want to graduate from. But I was just starting. I had my first 22 students. I was like, they'll say this woman is complete bunkers. And so I have it in my journal, but I never said it out loud. But to watch that people looked at the experience and then decided by themselves, this is where I don't want to graduate from, it is just a testament to what I set out to build is what's happening. And I you'll get a kick out of this because you've been in business for a minute. At this point, 3.5 years in, when I look at the magnitude of the transformation and the magnitude of the wins, it makes me really wonder what would be happening when we hit year 5, when we hit year 10. And when I say happening, it's in the lives of the doctors, because the wins are getting deeper and bigger, right? Because in the beginning, our big celebrations were, yes, we had people who crossed the 6-figure, 7-figure mark, but it's like people starting to get visible, first Facebook Live, all of those kind of things. The wins in the group now just don't make sense. Like how mind-boggling they are. And the reason why I share that is, as an entrepreneur, just stay there. Don't quit. Because it's like wine, right? The longer you stay at it, the better everything is. The bigger wins you can get your clients, the more impact you can have, the more it's wild. Because again, we're at 3 years, we're at 3.5 years. And so, yeah, you didn't ask me that, but I thought I'd throw it in there because it's a game changer.
Yeah.
And that's why one of my biggest things is, please don't quit. If you need help, if you need support, get it, but please don't quit.
And we think that really speaks to that passion piece, right? With people connecting with what is their why, what are they drawn to do? What are they called to do? Because you're seeing that for the things that you have built and the things that are really important to you. I'm in a phase where, I'm seeing that for my coaching clients. I'm seeing that for my patients that I'm doing weight management for, seeing that in these pockets that I really engage with and love. And that isn't to say that there hasn't been hardship or doubt or fear or any of those things. But when we engage with that thing that we're really passionate about and we stick with it through the hard, right, then we get to see the blossom, the impact that we all have wanted to have, right, no matter what we're doing.
Yeah. And I've loved watching you do what you do. What you do is such a gift. Like, really, it's such a gift to the physician community, really. Yeah.
Okay, well, that filled my cup. So there's someone out there who's listening, who's struggling, who is sitting in that place and they can see the fear sitting between them and their goals. What is it that you want them to know? If there's anything left that you haven't shared, because I do have a lot of people that listen and they know that there's something else out there for them. They might even know what it is, but that fear is very real. What do you want them to know?
So I used to think that if I learned enough, grew enough, the fear would go away. So I spent my time waiting for the fear to go away. Okay. Now, when I was probably about 10 years as an entrepreneur, this is a whole decade, I remember sitting and I said, you know what? It is still here. There is nothing I have done that has made this go away. So I started thinking, I was like, okay, when I wanted to get into med school, the fear was there. Then I got into med school, the fear was there. Then it was time to get into residency, the fear was there. Then time to get my first attending job, the fear was really there. Then I started my practice, there goes the fear. Then I started getting a team on board, there's the fear. I started a second business, there's the fear. So it dawned on me, it never goes away. So imagine the tragedy of living to the age of 80 and realizing the only way I could have done what I thought, what I knew I could do, would have been to do it with the fear. Like at 80, then what are we going to do? Granted, people start things early, but why waste our youth waiting for the fear to go away?
Yeah.
So that day I made a decision. And that's the decision I want to invite you to consider and make. And that decision was I had let fear sometimes sit in the driver's seat and decide if we were going left or if we're going right or if we're going forward or not. And I was the passenger. And I decided since it won't go away, since we must be in this car together, I'm going to change it. And so I kicked fear out of the driver's seat and I sit in the driver's seat. And I'm like, you can yap all you want, but just sit in your corner over there. And you no longer have the right to vote. I do not let fear vote. I do not decide if I'm going to do something or not do it because of fear. If I decide not to do it, it's a strategic decision that this will not take me towards where I'm trying to go. But I do not let fear vote. So it's not going away. It's always there. Every time I pick up a new project, it yells as loud as it can yell, but it does not drive anymore.
Yeah.
I am the driver and I am taking my life and I'm going to make it match up with the vision I have for it. I do not let fear vote. So pretty pleased with 17 cherries on top. It took me a decade to figure this out. You figured it out in 2 minutes, right? If you can make that decision, the transformation you will experience over a 90-day period, 180 days, a year will blow your mind. Don't let fear vote anymore. Now, am I saying that to say you won't have challenges, everything will be nice and cute? No, you're going to have challenges. I have always had challenges. You're going to have things that'll make you afraid. I've always had those. They don't go away. But I want you to think about yourself as a champion. A champion is a champion because they overcame obstacles and won. And every physician can be that. That's what I got.
We'll put fear in the back seat. It doesn't navigate. It doesn't change the radio station. It can just hang out. It can just be there. Love that. For anyone who's listening and is curious to learn more about you and your work, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, so for your listeners, this is what I'll do, because if you're thinking about it, you probably have questions and all of those things, and I would send you to actually just book a call with my team, and it's EntreMD, so EntreMD.com/call. And Dr. Mello will tell you the person you'll get to speak to, her name is Makita. And she is like the sweetest person ever. It is not about you getting on a call and there's hard sales and people telling you will suck if you don't do it's none of that stuff. It's really to help you analyze your own decision. Like, is this something like working with EntreMD? Is this something I should be thinking about? Is this something that would work for me? Is this my best next step? And we don't strong arm anybody. You've heard us talk about the community. And one of my jobs is to invite people who the community is wired for, who would be such a gift to, right? So we're not trying to strong arm anybody. It's not a high pressure thing at all. There are many people who have said, oh my goodness, that call, even people who never worked with us, but like that call with Makita was such a game changer for me. So entremd.com/call. And if you're like, no, I don't think that's what I want to do, we have a podcast. It's called the EntreMD Podcast. You're already on a podcast platform. So just search it there. You'll find us and we will get to chat twice a week. And we just crossed 400 episodes, Dr. Mallow. Can you believe that? It's so wild. But we talk shop and Dr. Mallow will tell you as well, I don't do fluff. I don't say, well, because this is the podcast, I'm going to show up at half-mast. And then I give my best stuff. So that would just be your opportunity to start to immerse yourself in all of these concepts and take it to the next level.
Yeah. And for anybody who's listening who hasn't listened to it, go find the episode, Dear Employed Physician, which remains my favorite one. And I think it's such a love letter to taking back ownership of your life and deciding from now on, I'm the boss of me, no matter where I show up and work, just full of gems. So Dr. Una, thank you so much for taking the time to come out and talk with us and share your wisdom and your story with us. It's been a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. And one last thing for everyone who's listening, if you have not subscribed to this podcast, subscribe to the podcast. Dr. Mello is the real deal. And if you haven't left her a review, I know a lot of podcasters and I know Dr. Mello. It takes a lot of work to pull this off. And this is her giving back to the physician community. And one of the ways we can support is by leaving reviews, is by sharing it so that the word can get out there because her work matters. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you haven't left a review, please leave a review. It really helps her get the word out.
All right, you heard the lady. Be thrilled, of course, to read your reviews. And thank you so much, as always, for listening. That's what we have for you this week. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.